everyone. Welcome back to Citizen Bear. Podcast look at the many topics of my book, The Demonstrative Citizen, The Revelation of Two Dragons, and its forthcoming companion, second book. My name is Dave Maier, by the way. I'm the author of the book. So in this episode, I want to discuss a topic that is inherent to the first book and expressly discussed in the second volume, the nobility of the common man. It is, in my opinion, the very foundation of free society. And I discussed this several episodes ago. I mentioned it, that many people ask, what is democracy within the republic? And I think the fundamental answer to that is, it is about the nobility of the common man. And I want to take a moment and discuss a little bit about that. And I don't think this episode is going to be hugely long. I think we'll revisit this at another time in a little more depth. But I want to introduce the topic to you. In John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, and I'm paraphrasing to you, he talks briefly about how if you are destitute, if you are in trouble, and you have nowhere to turn, and you have nothing left, go to the poor. The poor will help. They are the only ones who will help you, the only ones. And I think that is an incredibly powerful thing, but it is a statement in his book, and The Grapes of Wrath is an incredibly powerful story. But this is inherent to the idea of the nobility of the common man, that they will do hard things and they will sacrifice for people and each other. And they understand and they have suffered equally, and they can find the ability to live out their faith and help each other to move forward. And they find really the greatness in what free society should be. And really, it is inherent to how they survive and how the characters in this book survive. They find that turning to each other and a whole series of different strategies, but in the end, they learn to care for each other. But first and foremost, I think it's important to say that the concept, the idea of the nobility of the common man starts and ends with free will. Our ability to not only make choices, but to act on them. And I want to talk about that a little bit later, but right now I want to move into the idea of, some historical concept just to recap on that. And it's important to take a look at the world hundreds of years ago when our founding fathers declared independence from Great Britain. At that time, all of the royal houses, Europe and all that, ran the world. Yes, Britain had a parliament, it had a House of Commons and Magna Carta, but the king still wielded a great deal of power and did so. And in many of the other countries, some had freedoms, some liberties, but some government formations. But the royal houses ruled. End of sentence. And with them, through that rule, were the nobility. And they held most of the money, the land, and so forth and so on. They controlled society. That's something that we really don't get our head around very often anymore because it's been swept away. But the others have filled that void with the dictator, the authoritarian, and others. And we have to be careful of that we don't return to that concept or allow it to take root against free society, because so many have suffered so long to get there, including our founding fathers. I can only imagine in that time what it must have been like that a group of relative commoners, even if they were had a little more stature within the colony, wrote to the King of England and told him to fundamentally piss off, and they were going to make their own choices. I mean, can you imagine? I think that was the starting point in a world that we started to really, really look at liberty and the idea of self-determination, and the idea that we would exercise our own free will and make our own choices and find our way forward, and that we would decide what was right and what was wrong. I think that the idea that you could disrupt a society and cast aside the idea that birthright was the foundation of nobility, and that an aristocracy and a lineage created an elitism and an entitlement, was seriously under attack. And they started that people could grow and make their own way. And they had a right to pursue those things and have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that was quite a rebellious, disruptive idea in that time. And it probably was one of the reasons that the British reacted so badly. There were other disruptions in the world that the British were fighting, but in the United States, I suspect in the colonies, the 13 colonies, I suspect this was more than just losing a colony. This was an idea that had to be killed. It had to die on the vine because it was a threat to everything that the royal houses and the King of England and the nobility really lived on. And I don't think they wanted to see it to grow. Oh, well. I think in the end, what brought the final death knell to the royal houses was a combination of the Industrial Revolution, World War I, and the growing influence of the USA. In my opinion, we're final death blows to the nobility class and the principal ruling order. I think that, we can look back and see in the United States at the time of the Industrial Revolution and in other parts of the world, even in England, people were building fortunes now and building businesses, and a middle class was really growing and a wealthy class was growing. But a non-noble class, they didn't inherit it. They made it. They earned it. They built it. And you can complain about how they did it or what they did, but they did. No one gave them anything. The cost of hardship in World War I depleted the noble class through many means, even post-war taxes. And we saw this in Britain, where taxes after World War I and even after a little bit after World War II really started tapping the wealth out of the nobility in the land because they needed to redistribute it because things were so bad and the treasury was so broke. The war had just really ravaged all of Europe so terribly, in the world in many ways. As part of that, though, excuse me, there can be no doubt that World War I, also the military aspects of World War I, just swept away the royal families. The Austrian family, the royal family, the empire, the Austrian Empire was gone. Kaiser Wilhelm famously cast aside and thrown out, forced to abdicate and marched across the border on foot. Nicholas II, well, really more towards World War I, but the Russian Empire then leading into World War II collapsed, Russia as a result of World War I, but the Tsar of Russia collapsed. He was overthrown. And I think it's an important note to remember that, because if people believe that, if these authoritarian rulers believe you can hide behind the power of government, you might want to call Tsar Nicholas II or Kaiser Wilhelm or even Louis XVI and ask him how it's working out for him, because it didn't. I think one of the most amazing periods, though, for this time frame in 1912, with World War I coming on and all of this, and the depletion of the rise of the Industrial Revolution, which had been going on since the 1890s and stuff, or before, is Titanic. I think we really see a moment in time in this great nobility of the common man. Titanic was a symbol of society with its classes. You had the elites in the first class and the up-and-comers in the second class, and steerage in the third class of the poor. And yet, when she hit the iceberg, many couldn't make it out of steerage. They couldn't get out, but many did. Some did. And the second class, too. And it didn't matter who you were after the Titanic began to sink. Men stood at the rails They put their wives and their children into the lifeboats, and they stepped back, and they met their sacrifice, but they died equally as men. I think that we no longer could look at classes the same way. And this was also brought around by World War I. We could no longer look at classes the same way, as people fought so hard and worked to win that war or fight it. And it had kind of swept away the concept. But in Titanic, we also saw the great sacrifice of the stokers and the boilermen who stayed at their posts as the ship sank in order to keep the boilers working so that the Titanic could be lit and people could see and have lights, and they could help keep the people able to be help in their ability to get to the lifeboats, and also see the ship and rally the lifeboats around a little further away, and so forth and so on. A powerful, powerful thing to stay at your post there like that for the good of others. That's something, that kind of notability has always been held to breeding and to an elite class, but it's not. It's faith. It's love. It is an act of love. And that is what we do. That is at the heart of the nobility of the common man, is the fact that we are capable of making sacrifice and doing great things and looking to others and doing those things that are important in the world. Exercising our free will, having a choice to do what is right and what is best, what is noble sometimes. I think that, moving on my little notes here, sorry. I want to take a concept and put it out there, and I think I need to dance around this a little bit, but I want to be very express right out of the gate. When we talk about authoritarianism and we talk about the rise of control and more powerful, and even if we're not talking about kings, we are talking about a control and a central government and figures and an all-powerful government. We must remember something. There is but one king in the world. There is but one king, period. And that is Jesus Christ. And he is my Lord and Savior. No one, no dictator, no social elite, not the most religious amongst us, can claim Christ's throne. Many can rise to lead society. Some will rise to lead the church, but only Christ is king. This is a founding ideal behind free society. Even if you're not a Christian, follow another faith, or have no religion at all, we follow no king except that which is in our heart and our conscience. This is the journey of faith and citizenship that is discussed, that is at the heart of my book. We each possess free will and the ability to not only take individual choices, but to act on them. In keeping, we must all accept personal responsibility on one level or another for our choices and our actions. It is in this ideal that the Constitution is built, and the jury box, the ballot box, and the Alamo box are all founded. We must always consider our faith and our moral anchor when we do this. And we must look to some religions in the world, and I think, as I said before, there are many paths to enlightenment, and I believe they end in Jesus Christ. But I'm a Christian. And I believe that is because of redemption and because of salvation and grace, and only He can offer it to us, and it is the only religion where it is offered. We must also remember that in Christianity, we enter into a relationship with God of our own free will. It is a relationship. It is not a must-do thing. We choose to enter into that relationship, and we do then have a relationship with God, with Jesus Christ. And we accept and grow in His teachings. There is a difference between that. That is not an authoritarian idea. That is a free will and a free society idea. And is why Christianity is so often at the root of free society. Is why Christianity becomes attacked by many who want to destroy free society. In contrast, I think there are religions, whether they are promote authoritarianism or they have been hijacked by authoritarianism. And some Christian churches have too. Let's not underestimate that. So, I'm not criticizing any one thing, but I think we have to be careful about whether or not faith is being used in the wrong way towards an authoritarian ideal. But when we talk about the individual journey of faith and when we talk about entering of our own free will into a relationship with God, that is free society at its best. And we take that moral foundation into how we conduct ourselves in a free society and how we conduct our laws and our relationships and other things. I think what's really important, whether you are of any particular religion or any particular faith, including Christianity, when we listen, we must consider who we want to be and how we want to get there. In Christianity, and I think this is true of most religions, a good minister, a good teacher, leads us to a choice, but we make that choice. Instead of having us mandated that you will suffer if you do not follow a particular ideal. We've seen that in our society, that regardless of what the Bible says or what other people think, you have to rewrite the Bible, you have to start doing things this way. That's not free society. That's not a free choice. What is a free choice is growing in our understanding of the Bible. And that's kind of a workaround that people, I think, sometimes forget. You can read the Bible over a lifetime, and it will mean more and more and more to you reading the same scriptures because you understand it better and you grow in your understanding, and it will allow you greater grace and greater love for your neighbor when you do that. And people should be allowed to live as they wish, but they don't have a right to impose it on other people, and they do not have a right to rewrite God's word. And we all have to accept our sin. We all have to accept that we live in a fallen world and that we have failings, and that it is only through God's grace that we grow and become better. So that I think this is why Christianity is a strong base for free society. But in the end, we all must choose, and we all must look at our faith and our understanding of faith and really ask ourselves, is this what we want? Is this how we want our society to live? I think it's a frightening thing that some people might say, I want to hurt other people and I want to live in an authoritarian regime. God bless you, but that ain't for me, And you don't have a right to bring it to me either. I want to leave that there. It's something that may get touched on later, but I just want to put the food for thought out there. In the story, Bear finds his faith greatly, and he finds himself often in Amish country, and he works with the Amish, and there's a great contrast. But faith becomes a very important part of his movement with his counterparts and his friends and other people in the movement in defense of his home and his liberties and his country. And I think that that's something that, as we go through that story, we understand how important faith really is and how we can use it and how it strengthens us and makes us stronger and better. I want to go over and jump off that and get into a little bit of big government. I know I rail on this a little bit, so we have to be, I don't want to go too far. Look, government is important. The Constitution of the United States outlines government. Regulations are important. Laws are very important. We have to have some structure. No one's railing about that. But a government that becomes so big that it taxes, it restrains its people, and it becomes so intrusive that it restricts aspects of its people to exercise their free will, to find life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It no longer really is a government that is serving. It is a government that is now becoming authoritarian. And that is not a reason to overthrow government. That is a reason to get rid of the people who have already destroyed government as we was supposed to be. And we need to vote them out. We need to legislate them out. We need to, legally get them out. And frankly, if we have to grab them by the scruff of the neck and throw them out, we have to preserve our society in the face of such things. Big government, and I mean big government and intrusive government, is the antithesis of free society. The two cannot coexist. And we're seeing that come to a head in our society right now. And Bear lives with it in his story, fighting against it. And they're, not to use a term, but they all have to have society, government, everyone, in the moment of this story and this incredible moment that they're living through, the atrocity that they're living through, this revelation that they're living through, have to have a come-to-Jesus moment in how they proceed and how they're going to come together and start to really rethink how we're doing things. This concept also rings true in faith, and I've already covered this, but we want to make sure that we don't lose track that when what I call that journey of faith and citizenship, that we talk about looking at government, but we also want to talk about our faith and make sure that those two things, that the values that we adhere, that are incorporated in the Constitution, that are incorporated in our faith, come together in a cohesive manner for a free society. I think that there's a great deal to be discussed in this topic, and I want to go further down the road. But when we talk about the nobility of the common man, I think our society has become better than what Steinbeck wrote about in his Grapes of Wrath. We do try to do better, and we do try to reach out for our friends and our neighbors. And I think we should try to always be a better society, give of ourselves. And we should seek that truth that lies within us and in our hearts. And Bear talks about it in his testimony when he's talking about his life and what happened to him in his great story. And he talks often about the poor, and he talks often about how people have truly suffered. And he brings his faith to bear in this, in the story. And I think that this is something that we all have to reflect on in our lives. A great deal has been taken away from us in pursuit of a new world order, in pursuit of a big government, trade, and in other things. And it has ripped the soul out of our society. Good people with good intentions who work hard and care have lost their homes, they've lost their jobs, they've been forced to move, they've been looked down upon and belittled. And our last president called them a threat to society. They're not a threat. They've been harmed by bad policies and bad leadership. And it is systemic in our country right now. And people are looking for a better way, and they're looking for hope. And we need government to help provide that. And we need to help each other provide that. And we are finding ways forward, and we're finding ways that we can do better. But we have to also change how we live in the world and how the world perceives us. And that can be both a reason for war and a reason against it. It makes creating and living a very difficult thing. But this is a moment when we see the nobility of the common man again, where in times of real struggle and real downtrodden moments, we can help each other, and they will. And they always reach out. And we can do better for each other. Where government can fail, we can succeed. And this is at the nobility of the common man, and it is at the concept of the journey of faith and citizenship. And I want to read something from the book, kind of, again, a conclusion for this. And it is the beginning of chapter 14 here. And my little clamp isn't doing so well, but, you allow me. And I'll read the quote from Alexander Hamilton at the top of the chapter. There is a certain enthusiasm in liberty that makes human nature rise above itself in acts of bravery and heroism. I think that's a great description of the nobility of the common man right there. But Berg writes on in his story, and this is what he tells. He says at the beginning of chapter 14, and the chapter is called The Beginning of the End. This is where they're really building a force to go in and finish driving an enemy from their shores. Christ told us in the Beatitudes that the children, the poor, and the faint of heart are among the most blessed in our world. Through this, I would propose to you that they are also the most powerful. They are the only ones amongst us all who have the authority to wield the sword of truth in Christ's place, a sword that pierces not only our body but our very soul. There is no fence, no barrier, no army that can stand before it when wielded by the most blessed amongst us. I believe it is for this very reason that those founded in blind ambition, those who seek power and promote their own vanity, are unable to look upon nor hear these blessed people, for to do so would reveal their true nature for all the world to see. Truth will always strike down the false veil of piety worn by those founded in ambition, for in the end the sword of truth and the sword of justice are formed in the same great forge by the same great master. Among these blessed souls there is no division, race, or political ideology. They have suffered at the hands of the ambitious equally, and are therefore united in what they do and do not have. When in any society the numbers of the unseen and the unheard grow, the ambitious people are struck down by the truth by those who choose to be free. In the end, truth will be seen and it will be heard. I think that I can read on, but I think that sums it up, and I think it kind of puts the point on what I want to say, that free people, common man, through his free will, his choices, and his willing to act, founded in good values, founded in love, can do the impossible and can change the world, one person at a time. So I'll catch you next time, and we'll talk about something new. Thanks.